Hello and welcome to the Fandom Academy podcast. This is your host, Rich, flying solo today for another Game of Thrones retrospective, Best of Game of Thrones podcast. So, no Dan, no Kyle, just me, your host, Rich, here to talk to you about Game of Thrones. Before we get to today's Game of Thrones topic and our list, just some reminders that you can find us, the Fandom Academy podcast, on all social media platforms Twitter, Facebook, Instagram. And you can find us on all podcast platforms Stitcher, Spotify, SoundCloud, iTunes, all that. And please remember to look for our website, fandomacademy.com, where you can buy cool stuff, read great blogs by Dan and by Kyle. I have done pretty much nothing. Oh, I did write a blog, so there you go. Go read it. Anyway, today we're doing some Game of Thrones, and it is the Halloween season, so I am shaping our theme around that. We're doing more deaths, more Game of Thrones deaths. This show was all about death, so we are looking at that. And today's theme, it's going to be a two-parter because there were so many deaths. Today we are looking at the best, most epic and emotional deaths. What deaths were epic, huge, blew us away? What deaths gutted us on an emotional level or moved us in an emotional level in some way? Well, there were lots of them. And that's what we're going to break down. I have a top 30 that we're going to break down in two parts. I'm not going to throw 30 deaths at you at once. We're going to spread it out a little bit. It's actually going to be 31, so we're going to do half and half. So, part one of the most epic and emotional deaths in Game of Thrones. Number 31 were the brothers Baratheon, Robert and Renly, not Stannis. Stannis's was disappointing. Robert and Renly, they came early on. King Robert and his brother Renly, who sought the throne, was part of the War of the Five Kings. Their deaths were epic because they both had a huge impact on the story. Clearly, Robert's rebellion, he brought stability to the Seven Kingdoms. His friendship with Ned kept everything stable. Nobody did anything. He was not a great king, but there was prosperity and, for the most part, peace in the Seven Kingdoms. So when he died, everything went to shit. And his brother Renly had no claim to the throne, but he had a huge army. And he was the one that actually could have made a great king. But his death was epic because it came at the hands of his brother Stannis and some black magic. And it changed the tide of the War of the Five Kings. So their deaths early on had a huge impact on the story, and they were both epic deaths. Coming in at number 30, and I will clarify if these deaths make the list because they're epic, because they're emotional, or both. So, number 30, more of an epic, cool death. And there are two of them, Melisandre and Ned Umber. These deaths both came early in season 8, the final season. Ned Umber, little Umber boy, the bannerman for Jon Snow and Sansa Stark, the Umber family, he died at the end of season 8, the first episode. He had that really cool death that we didn't see at the hands of the Night King, where he was hammered, nailed to a wall, and they had to set him on fire. It was creepy and scary and epic. And Melisandre, who was so pivotal at the Battle of Winterfell and had just a cool magical death where she walked out into the snow and just faded off into old red witch dust. So those were two cool deaths in season 8, season that had some flawed deaths. So theirs were both pretty epic. Coming in at number 29 comes from the Battle of the Bastards, the epic episode from season 6. One the Giant and Rickon Stark. They were two casualties of the Battle of the Bastards, and they were both emotional casualties. First, Rickon, yes, we make a lot of the jokes that Rickon didn't zigzag, and Ramsay was able to shoot him pretty easily in the heart with an arrow. That was emotional. Obviously, we didn't have as much emotional connection to Rickon Stark, but we had an emotional connection clearly to Jon Snow, and he was clearly moved. We didn't want to see another Stark die. It was a tough death. And then at the end of the Battle of the Bastards, the Giant 1-1, breaking in through the gate at Winterfell, full of arrows. Our heart was breaking. Jon Snow's heart was breaking as we looked on him with sympathy, and then out of nowhere, that awful Ramsay Bolton shoots him in the eye with an arrow, breaking our heart. So, those were two tough deaths. emotional deaths. Coming in at number 28 are Samwell Tarly's father and brother, Randall and Dickon Tarly. Now, losing them, they weren't emotional, particularly Randall Tarly, who was an awful man, an abusive father, but their deaths were somewhat epic and somewhat of a turning point, particularly for me with Danny, because she burned them alive. And I remember that at the end of season 7, or halfway through season 7, when she did that. And then in our preview, me, Kyle, and Dan talking about it, I had so much issue with this. I thought, why would she do that? That's awful. So I had a lot of criticisms. Unbeknownst to me, my criticisms were founded and justified because that was the showrunner's way, let's say, of showing us Mad Queen. So it was epic that she was hearkening back to Aegon Targaryen, and also what we didn't realize, to her father. So it was an epic death in that way, more for Danny than for anything. Number 27 is a more emotional death. Maester Luwin, who was the maester for the Starks at Winterfell, this sweet, kind, grandfatherly figure to the Stark children, and he was there with Bran and Rickon, and when Theon captured Winterfell and his Ironborn soldiers turned on him, the one stabbed Maester Luwin, then he was out in the Godswood, and he said goodbye to Bran and Rickon, and it was so sad, so moving. He was a sweet character. It was an emotional death. I remember that early. We were still sweet summer children, not expecting all of these deaths, and that one at the time hit us pretty hard watching that episode. So that was an emotional death. Number 27. Coming in at number 26, Meryn Trant. Meryn Trant, a member of the Kingsguard. He was awful. He was terrible. He was Joffrey's henchman. He smacked Sansa at Joffrey's command. We find out later he's just this brutal, misogynist pig who likes to beat up little young girls. We see that when he is in Braavos with Mace Tyrell, and Arya spots him, and he's in the brothel, and he just wants to beat little girls. And he was just awful. We hated him. And they made us hate him. They emotionally manipulated us, and that's fine. They made him a villain. So when Arya kills him, it was an epic, badass moment for Arya, and an epic death for a just truly awful person in terms of the show. So the way Arya used her faceless skills to kill him, it was pretty epic. Okay, moving on to number 25 of the most epic and emotional deaths in Game of Thrones. These are more epic. It's the Warlock of Qarth, Pyat Pree, Krasnys Mo Naklos, the Slaver, and the Khals of the Dothraki. These were epic deaths that Dany caused when we were rooting for her, and she was just kicking ass. The Warlocks who stole her dragons, and our first Jacaerys moment from her, and then an epic Jacaerys moment with the Slaver when she gets the Unsullied, and then when she kills the Khals and she takes control of the Dothraki, burning them alive and her being the unburnt. These were Dany kicking ass. These were also moments where you can look back now and say Dany was slowly, I guess they were giving us foreshadowing that she would become Mad Queen. That was pretty lame foreshadowing. At the time, it was just epic hero kicking ass. So those were epic deaths for us. Number 24 is Viserys Targaryen. This was Dany's brother. This was an epic death because this was him getting what he deserved in a way that was satisfying in terms of TV shows go. When Khal Drogo gives him that crown for a king, this guy was slimy and abusive and cruel and weak. And we were glad when he got what he got, and it was an epic way to go out at the hands of Khal Drogo. Very cool. The number 23 epic or emotional deaths in Game of Thrones was the Night's Watchman that betrayed Jon Snow. Sir Alliser Thorne, Olly, and the other ones. This was epic. Getting their comeuppance. Olly, yes, this boy. Alliser with a very stoic death. It was an epic death. They took it like, brave soldiers. But Jon, our hero, getting his, payback on them. And they mutinied. And they deserved what they got. And it was an epic death. Coming in at number 22 is also epic. It's the Waith. the Waif from the Faceless Assassins. The Waif, Arya's adversary at the House of the Undying. She was the one who helped train Arya, but was always cruel to Arya. They went head to head, and finally Jaqen H'ghar told the Waif, yes, she's got to go. So the Waif hunted her down, chased her through the streets, chased her into the dark room. This was Arya's graduation, killing the Waif, where she went from being mentored and trained as a faceless assassin to killing a pretty strong faceless assassin, and she graduates. And we didn't know what was going to happen to Arya. We weren't convinced that she was going to survive because she didn't have plot armor like some of them would have later in the show, but she didn't have plot armor. Arya versus the Waif, epic battle, epic death, epic victory for our hero of the show, the princess who was promised, Arya Stark. Number 21 is an emotional death. Theon Greyjoy at the Battle of Winterfell at the hands of the Night King. This was a more emotional death. We were rooting for Theon at this point. He had grown so much, come so far, proved his loyalty, proved that he had grown as a human being, was there for Sansa, was there for the Starks, was trying so hard to continue to redeem himself and continually do the right thing, volunteered to protect Bran in the Godswood. I didn't like how he died. He didn't have to run full steam ahead at the Night King, but I guess he was doing the brave thing. So it was emotional when he died. It was emotional when Sansa said goodbye to him on the funeral pyre. We were not surprised. He was never going to have a happy ending, but it was still an emotional death for a character that by his end we grew to love. Number 20, Myrcella Baratheon. This is the daughter of Cersei Lannister and Jaime Lannister, the one that was sent off to Dorne and the Sand Snakes tried to kill, and Jaime rescues her. They're on a ship. They're ready to sail back to King's Landing, and we have this beautiful emotional moment between Jaime and Myrcella, where Myrcella says she knows that Jaime's her father, and Jaime finally finds some happiness because she says, I'm glad, and then boom. Her nose starts to bleed, and she dies in Jaime's arms. It was another Season 5 kick to the balls. Season 5 was such a brutal, emotional season for so many characters. It was rock bottom, and it was rock bottom for Jaime in this moment. You know, it was right before Jon Snow is killed in the finale. And Sansa, who's, you know, being tortured in Winterfell, and then she escapes. It was just a horrible moment, horrible season for our heroes. And this moment, Myrcella dying in Jaime's arms, moments after she says, I'm glad you're my father, and you can see his heart just overcome with emotion, and then she dies. That was a very emotional death. Okay, number 19 is an emotional death. Shireen Baratheon. Shireen Baratheon dying at the hands of Melisandre and her parents, Stannis Baratheon and her mother. These religious fanatics who think that they have to kill someone with king's blood, and they burn her alive, and the screams and the screams and the screams. We saw it coming. The groundwork was laid. They foreshadowed it enough. We knew it was going to happen, but it was brutal. The sweet little girl being burned alive. I mean, that's terrible. It was emotional. When I watched these episodes again, I fast forward over this part. I can't listen to the screams. It's awful. So, another emotional death. Moving on to more epic, badass, like a boss. Olenna Tyrell. This was a good death. Oh, this was one of the best. She went out in season 7. Jaime poisons her or lets her take the poison. And the way she trolls him and Cersei, especially Cersei, admitting to being the one who killed Joffrey. Oh, the memes that went around with her with the cigarette in her mouth and the sunglasses. Like a boss. It was an epic death because she made it an epic death. Okay, moving on. Olenna Tyrell, number 18. Moving on, number 17. Lysa Arryn. This was epic. This was epic, and Peter Baelish pushing her out the moon door. It was epic and how satisfying it was because she was twisted and bizarre and weird. And it was just, we didn't expect it fully. And the way he pushed her out the moon door, that was a good death. It was an epic death. So, We're about halfway through, and this isn't taking as long as other lists that have been this long, where I've done 30. So we're going to push through. It's not going to be a part one. It's going to be the list. So we're just going to push through. So thanks for hanging in with me. You get a bonus. You get the whole thing right now. So we're about halfway through. Number 16 in the most epic or emotional deaths in Game of Thrones, the direwolves. Oh, the direwolves. Lady, that's Sansa's direwolf. And Grey Wind, that's Robb's. And Summer, that's Bran's. Oh, these deaths just gutted us. Animal deaths in movies or TV shows always gut us. Lady dying because Cersei said so. Grey Wind dying at the Red Wedding, being shot with arrows. Summer dying north of the Wall, protecting Bran and Hodor. Oh, it was awful. It was awful. These were all emotional gut punches, seeing these dire wolves. Ghost and Nymeria, the only ones that survived. So these were very sad. Oh, and Rickon, Shaggy Dog. We didn't see the death, but we did see his head, knowing that he died. But very sad. Ghost and Nymeria, the only ones that lived, but seeing these dire wolves, always an emotional gut punch when we see what happens to them. Okay, getting into the top half is number 15, Peter Baelish, Littlefinger. This was an epic death, a major character of the show who drove a lot, who drove so many things, so many plot points. And his end was great, even if the immediate plot prior that got them there was flawed with the whole Sansa versus Arya plot line. It didn't make sense. It was weird. But the end, that moment in the Hall of Winterfell when Sansa turns to him and says, "How do you answer these charges?" And now you see that Sansa and Arya and yes, Bran as well are all strong Stark wolves. And Sansa passes the sentence. Arya carries out the punishment. We would have liked to have seen the plot that got here much better for a character of Baelish's status, Littlefinger's status. But the death itself, it was great. It was epic. I loved it. So criticisms aside, it was still awesome. And the same's going to hold true for the next one, which is the Night King. It was flawed. It was flawed in that when the Night King was killed, we were left with a lot of unanswered questions, unanswered character, story, background of the Night King. But you know what? I love the Battle of Winterfell. It's one of my favorite episodes. It's the best battle episode for me. Arya, the way she killed him, flying out of there was one of my favorite scenes. The fact that she was the princess that was promised, how it all led up to that in that episode. His death right there. When he turns around and grabs her. Yes, these characters at this point did sort of have plot armor, but when he grabbed her, I'm so conditioned by this show thinking, oh no, she's screwed. And she drops the cat's paw dagger just like she did against Brienne when they were sparring. I loved it. It was great. The fact that it was Arya, it was great. The fact that she saved the world, yes, with everyone else, but her killing the Night King, it was great. It was epic. It was good versus evil, good one. The other criticisms aside, it still was an epic death. So take that. Coming in at number 13, we're getting close. Number 13 is also from the same episode, The Battle of Winterfell, Ser Jorah Mormont. Oh, Ser Jorah, this was really a good death. It was emotional. We were not surprised because Jorah, poor character, poor put upon character, stuck in the friend zone, getting grayscale. Just, he had such a tough journey, but he was so loyal to Dany. And this was Emilia Clarke's best acting of the whole series. There were criticisms about the final season. I give you that. But her acting in that season, I wish she had won an Emmy. She didn't. And in this scene, holding the dead body of Jorah and her crying, every time I watch it, it's still emotional. It broke my heart watching it when I first saw it. His death was so emotional. One of the best emotional deaths. Obviously, I put it on this list for a reason, but it was really, really good. One of the high points of an embattled final season. So Jorah Mormont, a beloved character, going out, saving Daenerys Targaryen, protecting her, and him dying in her arms as she is just gutted, and then we are gutted. So that was a good one. So coming in at number 12 is another emotional death. It was Ygritte of the Free Folk, Jon Snow's love, who she's right there. She hates him, but she loves him. She's pointing the arrow at him. He smiles. She can't bring herself to release the arrow and kill him. And she stops, and we think everything's okay, and then boom, out of nowhere, she gets an arrow. We did not see it coming. It was such a oof moment. And it was such an emotional moment. Such a tragic moment for this Romeo and Juliet characters. And she has the great line, "You know nothing, Jon Snow." It was an emotional death. It was a good death. It had a great episode, the battle at the wall. Ygritte. Emotional, epic, all of it. It was a good one. Coming in at number 11, epic deaths. Ramsay Bolton. Way to go, Sansa. Just way to go. At the end of Battle of the Bastards, one of the best villains in TV history. Just an awful psychopath of a villain. And Battle of the Bastards, such an epic episode. Jon Snow, one-on-one battle, fighting, beats him, doesn't kill him, saves him for Sansa, and he goes out the way he should have at the hands of Sansa with the hounds. It was epic, great villain who got what was coming to him, and at the end of probably the best season, season 6, awesome. Battle of the Bastards, Ramsay Bolton, goodbye. Coming in at number 10 was another epic death. Finally, a villain gets what was coming to him, Walder Frey. Walder Frey, this wormy, cowardly man who betrayed the Starks at the Red Wedding and was just awful in so many ways, finally gets what was coming to him. Opens the season 7 with Arya Stark. I'm sorry, I keep forgetting. I did this in another list. At the end of season 6, in that finale, that great finale, Winds of Winter, Arya, using her faceless assassin skills, kills him, and prior to that feeds his 2 sons to him in a pie. It was a great epic death, and the fact that it was Arya and how Arya did it, epic. This is the definition of epic. Now, coming in, we're in the top 10. Coming in at number 9, this was an epic and emotional death, Viserion the Dragon. Epic and emotional. North of the Wall, our hero Jon and Jorah and the Hound and all of them are trapped by the Night King and the army of the dead. And Dany comes in with her 3 dragons. I was just watching this episode the other night. The dragons are saving Jon and everyone. And then out of nowhere, the Night King with his ice spear takes out Viserion. And it was so tough watching him fly with the spear gutting him in the blood and crash landing into the ice, and it's sinking in the ice. This dragon, it was huge and sad and brutal to watch. So it was emotional and it was epic and it was a tough death. Now, coming in at number 8, Oberyn Martell, the Red Viper. This was both epic and emotional. More epic, but still emotional. Oberyn is fighting. He's Tyrion's champion in a trial by combat against the Mountain. Oberyn wins, Tyrion gets his freedom. Oberyn loses, Tyrion is sentenced to death. We didn't expect Oberyn to die. We really didn't. I expected Oberyn to win. Part of why I remember when Oberyn first appeared on the show, looking up who the best fighters in Westeros are, because they're talking about him as a legendary fighter. And I shouldn't have done that because I got a spoiler that he kills the Mountain. So I'm like, oh, when this episode aired, I'm like, oh, he's going to kill the Mountain. But I didn't know how, that it would be with poison after, he poisons him with his blade and then gets his head crushed. So I didn't expect him to die. I thought, oh, he's going to win because I got it spoiled online. So it was brutal. It was epic. It was Oberyn's arrogance and hubris that got him killed, and then we're like, oh no. So that epic, it was a great fight. It was short, and the epicness of how he died, that brutal way he died, the emotional resonance that now Tyrion, our beloved Tyrion, is screwed. There is a great video. Let me stop here in this list. A great video. This show was known for subverting our expectations. Heroes got killed that we didn't expect to get killed. all these things. There's a great video on how this episode didn't subvert expectations. The channel is a great channel, Nando, Nando V, the letter V movies. So Nando versus movies, Nando V movies, The Best of Thrones, The Mountain and the Viper, subverted expectations. It's a great video that breaks down what this episode and this fight did, subverting our subverted expectations of this show. I hope that makes sense in how I described it. Go check it out. Nando V movies. But anyway, number 8, Epic Deaths, Oberyn Martell, the Red Viper. I mean, just listen to that. The name of the episode is The Viper versus the Mountain. So it doesn't get more epic than that. Okay, we're getting close to the top. So these are going to be some epic and gut punch deaths. Coming in at number 7, Hodor. Oh, sweet Hodor. This is emotional. It's brutal. It's emotional because Hodor was such clearly a sweet and innocent character who was just, his whole existence was about helping and carrying Bran. And he was so sweet and innocent. So seeing him die to save Bran, clearly brutal in and of itself. But having it linked and connected to Bran in the Weirwood tree, net with the three-eyed raven, seeing that Bran with the whole warging and going back in time and the whole cosmic thing breaking Hodor's brain and making it go from hold the door to Hodor, seeing that that's what caused Hodor's life of being Hodor, and in the same moment that he's being killed, oi, this was tough. This was emotional and brutal for us. Our sweet Hodor. Tough one. Yeah, still tough just talking about it. Okay, coming in at number 6 is an epic death. Tywin Lannister at the hands of his son Tyrion Lannister, shooting him with an arrow, a crossbow, while he's sitting on the privy on the toilet. This was an epic death, if for no other reason, it was an epic, massive character. A character whose shadow loomed over everything, the smartest character, the most powerful character in the whole show. And his death was epic, and it was so epic also because after the fact, the void that his characters leaving left was never filled. From start to finish, they never filled the void that was Tywin Lannister. Maybe George R.R. Martin does fill that void in the books because there's so many more characters and plot lines in the books, but in the show, we never had the void filled. At least from my perspective, I didn't. I love Tywin. He's one of my favorite characters, one of the best characters on the show. And it was an epic death. It really was. I didn't see it coming. And just the way it all played out, sentencing Tyrion to death for a crime he knew. He was too smart. He knew Tyrion didn't commit it, but yet he went about it anyway. And to have him killed, have him sentenced to death. And at the same time being a hypocrite, sleeping with Shae, the prostitute, Tyrion's ex-girlfriend, and the Tower of the Hand. So all the emotional resonance, the emotional father and son, the betrayal, all of it. This was an epic, epic death. This was taking down of a titan, Tywin Lannister. Okay, top 5. Top 5 best epic emotional deaths. Can you think of what they are? Are they going to be epic? Are they going to be emotional? Are they going to be both? Can you guess? I'm sure you can guess a couple. But for now, let's proceed. Coming in at number 5 comes from the finale of probably the best season, season 6, The Winds of Winter, titled the episode, and it's everyone that Cersei Lannister kills in the Sept of Baelor with wildfire. Margaery Tyrell, Loras Tyrell, Mace Tyrell, the High Sept, Maester Pycelle getting killed by all the little spiders, the little children, all of it, Lancel Lannister being killed under there. Epic. It was a massive power play by Cersei, probably the best sequence of the show. The first 20 minutes, the musical breakdown, the music of the show in the first 20 minutes that leads up to the explosion. Go watch New Rockstars on YouTube. They break down the music of the first 20 minutes of how things lay on top of musical themes lay on top of each other, how they use certain instruments that they had never used before. I mean, it's Ramin Djawadi. He's a genius. He was an MVP of the whole series. So go watch New Rockstar's video on the music of this episode. But anyway, Cersei Lannister had been an underdog up to this point. She was losing. She was losing. It was a blowout. And she came back, and she came back like a boss, blowing up the scepter with wildfire, taking everyone out in one fell swoop. This was Game of Thrones at its high point, probably, of the entire series. After that, it gets a little embattled, but Battle of the Bastards, the previous episode, Winds of Winter season 6 finale, first 20 minutes, Sept of Baelor, boom, epic, 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 rivals anything ever filmed. Okay, moving on. That was number 5. Coming in at number 4, Joffrey Baratheon. Epic death of the king, epic death of a villain, out of nowhere. In episode 2 of season 4, Joffrey's at the height of his power. Everyone's under his thumb. The Red Wedding is gone. He's won the War of the Five Kings. He's being awful to Tyrion, awful to Sansa, awful to everyone. Out of nowhere, this vile person that we didn't think, or I didn't think was going anywhere, gets killed at what is now known as the Purple Wedding. Okay, done. Goodbye. And sets in motion everything for season 4 with Tyrion being on trial, as we already mentioned. So Joffrey's was epic. It was an epic takedown of an epic villain. Okay, top three. Coming in at number 3, most epic and emotional deaths is the death of Ned Stark. This truly was an epic and emotional death, and it really was the death that started it all for us. It let us know what the show was all about. I knew that this death was coming because I came to the show after season 1, so I knew, heard all about it, read all about it, that they killed off the major character, the most well-known actor on the show, Sean Bean. So it was big news, so I knew it was going to happen, but it was still emotional when you see it. You know, Ned Stark is such a gigantic character, and again, this is where they start subverting expectations. So it was epic, and it was emotional. You know, we love Ned Stark. Right up to the end of season 8, he was still being talked about with such reverence, even by Cersei Lannister. So, major character, epic and emotional death. Okay, top 2. I bet you can't guess what one of the top 2 are. You could probably guess what one is. But number 2, I don't think you can guess. And then when I say it, you're going to go, oh yeah, that's right. So the number 2 most epic and emotional deaths, Game of Thrones, Jon Snow. Now, you might have forgot it because obviously Jon Snow was resurrected, came back, and was a hero right up till the end, and was a major part after his death. But he did die. He died at the end of season 5, and it was epic. It was emotional. It almost made me quit the show. I almost forgot to add this death because of what I just mentioned, that clearly Jon Snow comes back. When this happened at the finale of season 5, as I mentioned, all of our characters had been just brutalized. Sansa at Winterfell, Jaime with Marcella dying in his arms, Dany was taken off by Drogon and was left in the middle of nowhere and surrounded by the Dothraki. It was just, it wasn't going well for the people we root for. And then at the end, Jon Snow gets killed and betrayed. Now, up to that point, nobody had plot armor. Ned had been killed. You know, so Robb had been killed. So many people had been killed. I thought, oh, that's it. All they want to do is tear our hearts out and kill us and break our hearts. I'm done with this show. I needed the full off season to recover and to hear what other people were saying, what I was thinking. Now, well, maybe the Red Woman, you know, can bring him back. Maybe Thoros of Myr can bring him back. We've seen this before, so maybe the resurrection thing, but we don't know. And poor Kit Harington had to lie to everyone. Yes, I'm dead. I'm not coming back. So at the time, it was brutal. It was just, I didn't see it coming. And when he died, I was crushed. I was gutted. So it was epic in terms of a plot twist, in terms of what happened, you know, how it happened, all of it. It was emotional. What can I say? When a death almost makes you quit the show, it's epic and emotional. Massive. And he comes back, so all's good. So that's number 2. Number 1 is probably pretty obvious. I'm sure you've probably guessed it. The most epic and emotional deaths, Game of Thrones, comes from the Red Wedding, the episode The Rains of Castamere. This was it. I mean, Robb Stark, Catelyn Stark, Talissa, Robb's wife, the baby Talissa was carrying. It was epic and emotional. This is it. This is a no-brainer. This is genuinely and truly, this isn't me just saying it because I love the show, but objectively, it is one of the most epic moments in television history. And it was a show defining moment. It was brutal. People will rank it as one of the best and biggest moments in television history, right up there with all of them. I didn't see it coming. I remember early in season 3 watching Robb look like a king, being awesome, and thinking, man, can't wait till he gets to King's Landing. I was one of those naive summer children thinking, man, because we're so used to the heroes winning. We're so conditioned, our expectations. And I'm thinking, yeah, he's Luke Skywalker, man. He's going all the way. And then, I still remember it. Just my brain not being able to in the moment think that this is happening, but seeing this really is happening. So clearly subverting our expectations. This was it. This was the death of our innocence in viewing this show more than it was Ned Stark. We saw Ned Stark and we said, okay, yeah, they killed Ned Stark, but now there's Robb Stark. Now Robb Stark has motivation. He's going to betray his father. We've seen that. He's going to take power. Once they killed Robb, oof. And the way it all happened, it was brutal and horrible and violent. And it was just so much. One of the most enjoyable things is book readers clearly knew about this because it was a big moment in the books. And I've talked to people that read in the books, and they had the same reaction when they're reading it. They just couldn't fathom it, couldn't contemplate it, couldn't process it. But they knew beforehand, so they knew when this episode was airing, The Rains of Castamere, there are videos on YouTube of people recording people watching it. People that knew it was going to happen, recording people that didn't know it was going to happen, and seeing the reaction. I remember I watched it on the Sunday night when it aired, and the next day I watched it with somebody who didn't know. They hadn't watched it Sunday night. They were watching it the next day, and I had my phone out sitting beside them, and I recorded them. I still have a picture of them, their hands up in their hair, and just, oh my God, I could still see it like it was yesterday. So the Red Wedding was the most epic and emotional death in Game of Thrones history and probably television history. So there it is, my friends. That is the top 31 of the most epic and emotional deaths in Game of Thrones. Again, as I mentioned early, I was originally going to do it as a two-parter because some of my other lists that were this long were like an hour. So I figured, let me break it up. I didn't want to do too much at once, but, as we were rolled with the punches. So thank you. If you have any thoughts, any disagreements, any omissions, believe me, I have right below this list in my notes a top 15 or another 15, I should say, of ones that didn't make the cut. Ones that were either emotional or epic. No Lyanna Mormont, no Beric Dondarrion. A lot of these didn't make it, but what can you do? I mean, what are we going to have? A top 50? I could do a top 50, but I'm not going to. So if you have any comments, any disagreements, any ones that should be higher, lower, or whatever, let us know. Let us know on Twitter, Facebook, Instagram, wherever you can find us. And you can check us out on thefandomacademy.com. You can find us on all podcast platforms, Stitcher, SoundCloud, iTunes, Spotify, all that. Again, I want to thank you for listening. Thank you for your patronage. I hope you miss Game of Thrones as much as I do and love Game of Thrones as much as I do. There will be more lists, but this Halloween season, you get podcasts about Game of Thrones deaths. Ooh, spooky. Anyway, thank you for listening. I wish you good fortune in the wars to come. Peace out.